Well, although the political focus this week is on the NDP convention, there was also movement in the race to be the leader of the Conservative Party. Two high-profile politicians have announced they will seek the leadership. Ontario MP Kellie Leitch was the first to enter the race, followed quickly by Quebec MP Maxime Bernier. We're discussing the Conservative leadership in round 3 of the Sunday Scrum. Susan Riley is in Ottawa, and with Katie O'Malley, Chris Hall is in Edmonton. So, Katie, let's talk about Kellie Leitch. What do you think her strengths and weaknesses are?
That's a very good question. I think her strength is maybe she got out there first. I have to say I am supremely puzzled as to why it is that she seems to want this job and why she is entering the race. She is, I mean, there's a lot of respect for her within the caucus, but she's not exactly what I would call a household name. And I think for most Conservatives as well, frankly, as Canadians in general, the most lasting memory of her may be standing beside Chris Alexander in front of that barbaric cultural practices placard. I'm not sure if that's really the tone the Conservatives would want their new leader to strike in the country. That said, apparently she does have people who are out there kind of doing the organization stuff. So if this is a ground game, maybe she has that advantage going. But if these were the only two candidates, let's just say I'd be betting on Bernier. Okay,
so Chris, let's talk a little bit about Maxime Bernier and the advantages and disadvantages that he could bring to the race.
Well, first of all, he's from Quebec, and that's a big advantage, although his French obviously is perfect. His English is not as strong as perhaps you might like for a national leader. That being said, he represents a particular flank within the Conservative Party. He's a libertarian. He believes in less government, probably the truest to those fiscal conservatives who might be looking for someone to carry the Stephen Harper torch forward. So for him, it's obviously important to get out early because, like Kellie Leitch, he isn't as well known, particularly outside of Quebec, but he will have strong support within that party for people who believe that the task of trying to make the federal government in particular smaller and less intrusive, he is their standard carrier for that kind of message.
And speaking of language, I think Kellie Leitch, I'm not even sure she has passable French. So Maxime Bernier might struggle a little bit in English, and I don't think she can really speak French. But Susan, what are your thoughts on Maxime Bernier or Kellie Leitch?
I think Maxime Bernier is a serious candidate, and I think Kellie Leitch is a completely puzzling candidate. I can't understand. She has no people skills per se. She's never just exhibited any. She already has a very good job as a pediatric surgeon. She's simply not a natural politician, as she hasn't made any particular friends in the party or outside the party. So unless she's just an overachiever and she feels she has to go for this, who knows what her motivation is. As for Maxime Bernier, he has a very crucial advantage, which is charm. He's a charming guy. He's got another advantage, which is consistency. He's kind of like Bernie Sanders in only this way. Well, they're both tall, but only in this way, in the sense that he's been preaching this libertarian gospel since he was with the Montreal Economic Institute many years ago, and he comes from the Beauce, which is a more conservative part of Quebec. I think he's a totally credible candidate, and I wouldn't be surprised if he did very well.
Would he continue to wear, Katie, the Julie Couillard incident with the top secret files being left around, or is that something that people have, you're shaking your head, Susan, is that people have forgotten and forgiven him?
I think people have mostly forgotten it. It may come up now and then as an, oh, right, that guy. I do remember I was watching him at the Manning conference where he gave his sort of introductory stump speech. And at one point he did sort of mention offhand, you know, I was foreign affairs for a while. And that was just it. There was no sort of explanation as to how that stopped being a thing and kind of the context there. And no one really brought it up. But it was sort of a reminder. We all thought, oh, right, that happened. But the other advantage that I think Bernier has that can't be kind of downplayed is that the Conservatives still do have sort of a modified point system for ridings, which means that if you can win a lot of support, now it's not, it has changed a little, so there is there's some more weight given to ridings that have more people than the tiny little EDAs with like 7 members, but it still means that if you've got support in Quebec, and I think he would sweep Quebec as far as the Conservative vote goes, that is a major advantage, and I think that cannot be underestimated, on top of the fact that, yeah, libertarians love the guy, and that's libertarians not just in Quebec but all over. They don't mind if his English is occasionally a little spotty. He's saying the things they want to hear, and there's a real fondness for him.
All right, the Conservatives received some internal criticism this week. In an interview with the Huffington Post, Calgary MP Deepak Obrahe had this to say on some of the new rules, including raising the annual Conservative membership fee to $25. These actions, in my view, this is what he had to say, have disenfranchised a vast majority of Canadians, newcomers, immigrants, low-income Canadians, and those economically challenged will be turned off and walk away because they can't afford these high fees. He later added, "What is concerning me is that, unfortunately, the Conservatives will be seen as an elitist and white-only party." Susan, what did you make of that?
Elitist, yes. I wasn't sure about the white-only part. Katie could correct me on this, but didn't they have the most ethnically diverse caucus last time?
They were definitely up there. Things did change. It's fair to say things changed in terms of their support within those ethnic communities in the outrage between 2011 and 2015.
I mean, they've really made, under Jason Kenney, concerted efforts to break into certain communities with conservative, socially conservative values. That being said, Mr. O'Brien knows the party better than I do, so I'm not suggesting that. I think the thing that struck me was that if you want to be a candidate for the leadership, you have to put up $100,000. You will get $50,000 back, but still, that's a lot of change. And there's a $5 million limit on leadership campaigns, which is almost getting into American territory. I think that, and Lisa Wright and others have said, whoa, that's a lot of money. So I think it does have the effect of narrowing the field and making the party more of an exclusive club.
Chris, your thoughts on that? Is the party having some challenges when it comes to attracting a diversity of supporters?
Well, they did in 2015, obviously. Look, I think Deepak Oberoi, who's been around the party a very long time, is one of the more senior MPs, is just warning the party that if you want to to rebuild the support among ethnic communities and immigrants who have just arrived to make the Conservatives a party that they will consider, that making it financially difficult to join and financially difficult to contribute is not the way to go about it. So I think it's just an early warning sign. We have to consider what the plans are here. And as far as the leadership race is going, $5 million, that is a lot of money. I don't expect anybody to get close to spending that much or raising that much, but it is a sign that the Conservatives are moving away from being that populist grassroots party that really shot them into the fore and allowed them to form back-to-back governments.
Maybe Kevin O'Leary will have that $5 million to spend. We'll see, right?
Maybe he will.
Thank you all very much. That is National Affairs editor Chris Hall in Edmonton. Very exciting day there taking place. Susan Riley and Katie O'Malley in Ottawa.